On today's video, we're going to talk about a couple different things you can do to avoid that holiday weight gain and keep your blood sugars low. All right, here we go, everybody. Welcome back to Life Revived. You know, I only have a couple of people that I know have subscribed to the page. And, if you have been watching these videos, I definitely appreciate that. Make sure you go ahead and hit that subscribe button. But if you have been following some of these videos, last time you saw me, I was in Mexico visiting my parents just before the holidays. And, luckily I still have some of my tan, but because I have recently now since returning from Mexico, we are in Manitoba, Canada. Very different environment, a lot colder here. We got some snow right away. And, one of the benefits, I guess, or what I'm going to talk about today is that we have to quarantine in Canada with 2020 being the interesting year that it is, the coronavirus being problematic across the world. A lot of places are putting different restrictions and qualifications in order for you to come back into Canada. Was we had to quarantine for 2 weeks. So on this video, I'm going to talk about what are some of the things that you can do to avoid that holiday weight gain, right? Whether it's special occasions, I think I should throw that in there, special occasions, holidays, and keep your blood sugars low and stop those from just going up and up and up. I spend so much time dealing with insulin resistant and diabetes, that's always a topic that's right on the top of my brain. But I said this before in one of the other videos, like I was saying, just in case you weren't watching, but typically in the US, from Thanksgiving through the new year, the average American will gain 10 pounds within that time period, right? And that's the average. So obviously there's more, there's less, but 10 pounds. And then in the new year, with all the New Year's resolutions, most people on average at most lose 5, right? So that means we're easily gaining at least 5 pounds a year as an American, all from a base of almost a month time worth. So what are some of the things that we can do about that? And I'm really excited to announce this, and this will be for some of mainly the ladies, but as the gentlemen go forward too. But one of the tools that I've been talking about, intermittent fasting. I'm going to go into some of the details of that at the end, but I'm going to give you a couple of my tips that I've given to people and the things that I follow during this holiday season, special occasion sort of situation, because truth of the matter is, and I like to live the way I preach, right? It makes it easier for me to talk to you about what you need to do to succeed. But you also would have heard me say, and you'll hear me say it again, it's always about progress, not perfection. That's my philosophy in life and actually how I approach it. And, I talked about some of the foods I got exposed to, the inflammatory reactions that I have to those and how I combat that. But the fact is, I was in Mexico, right? And most of what I do, I'm fairly grain-free. I'm always gluten-free. We don't eat much dairy. We don't drink very often. But when I was in Mexico, you can definitely believe I had some chips and salsa. I definitely had the guacamoles. I had some more dairy, and I certainly had some margaritas, and then coming back, right? It's very easy to continue on that course, right? But obviously, if I were to continue that, I'd be part of that statistic where I'd easily gain 10 pounds. And knowing me, it'd probably be way more than that if I kept that course from that holiday all the way through to, we just had Thanksgiving in the US all the way in through Christmas. And so what are some of the things that you can do in order to avoid that kind of bad pattern, avoid that weight loss, and keep ultimately your blood sugars and that insulin down? The number one thing is, ultimately, if it's not in your house, you can't eat it. So don't buy the things that you're going to give into, that are going to drive those cravings, that are going to make it hard. This was an advantage for us. Because we don't typically eat the way we did in Mexico. We don't typically give into the sweets and those types of things. And we knew we had to quarantine when we get back, because we're actually just outside of Winnipeg, about an hour and a half in the middle of nowhere. Right? If I wasn't on my computer, I'd show you the area around me. But because of that, we didn't plan to buy any of the things that we were kind of spoiling ourselves with in Mexico. So we didn't have the chips around. We didn't have the sweets. We didn't have the candies. We didn't have all the drinks and that sort of stuff. And so not having them in the house is by far one of the best things you can do, because if it's not there, you can't eat it. you know. And I was feeling that craving. I wanted to have that. I mean, my insulin was up from that week being there. So my body was trying to take that easy way out and say, give me more carbs, give me more of those sugars, give me more of those things. So I'm really happy we didn't have those around, because it made it a lot easier to avoid it, a lot easier to not give into it. You know, and the second thing, another thing you can do is, ultimately, if you are kind of finding you're still in those cravings, you're having trouble not having that stuff in the house. Maybe you have a spouse or a family member that keeps it around. You know, one of the other things you can do is start replacing the carbs, start replacing the sugars with more higher fat things and higher proteins, right? Because what those do, those have less insulin effect. They fill you up a little bit more, and it'll make your body more satiated. So you won't get those cravings as often. You won't, feel the need to keep reaching for them. And we can kind of dovetail that off to where, again, like I said, we just celebrated American Thanksgiving, even though I'm in Canada. One of the things we do is, I'm a big guy. I'm about 250, 260 pounds at about 6'5". I like to go up for my seconds. It's definitely a mental thing. And so what I typically do with the first plate of food that I grab is I make sure I grab the proteins. I grab the vegetables. I grab the things that are the low carb, not the big, the big drivers that some people go for. But, that could be like the turkeys. That could be like a Brussels sprout or a green bean dish. That can be, I can give you, like I said, if you haven't downloaded those recipes, definitely do. We can always give you more, let me know. But I mean, grab the proteins, grab the things like that you like first, fill up on those. And then when you go back for seconds, still grab more of those things that you like, but then, okay, then maybe I'll have some of the, we had some butternut squash, or, you can have some of the, if the mashed potatoes are your thing. So you're not eating quite as many of those. And the proteins and the fats that you had before are going to soften that sugar blow. That's going to soften that sort of insulin spike, which always helps in the long term. And then, I'm taking a different approach today, because I usually have notes that I like to follow, but I want to be a little more conversational with you guys. I want to have more of a, be myself during these things. So I'll appreciate comments on if you like one over the other. But the other one that I know I've kind of mentioned in the other videos, and I'm definitely going to release one coming soon with a more in-depth aspect to it. But the other thing that I know helps to avoid holiday special occasion weight gain. I just got back from the vacation. How not to be that statistic of the 10 pounds, how to keep those cravings down, how to keep blood sugars down during the holidays is intermittent fasting. And I think the one area that most people struggle with this is because you read all these different things about 1 meal a day, or 36-hour fast, or 48-hour fasts. And, it can be done so much easier. On average, most people don't even go 12 hours without eating or drinking something that raises their insulin. And in one of the other videos, I kind of started mentioning, pay attention to how often you're eating, how often you're putting something in your mouth, and starting to reduce that. So I'm going to embellish a little bit more on that. And for a little tidbit about what intermittent fasting is and why it helps, you're always going to hear me talk about insulin. You're always going to hear me talk about blood sugars. And that is what intermittent fasting does, is it helps keep those insulin levels down, right? And how does that pertain to this video? Insulin is a fat storing hormone. So if you're eating things that are producing a lot of insulin, right, that's going to tell your body, I need to store fat. I need to store fat. And it's going to start packing that away. Okay. Same thing with the sugary foods. If your blood sugars are high, there's going to be more insulin around. It's going to drive that fat storing hormone or reaction. And so with intermittent fasting, you don't have to jump into the 36-hour fast. You don't have to jump into the 1 meal a day. Like I said, use the other tools. Don't have the stuff in the house. Start swapping out some of those snacks or some of those meals for a little bit more protein, a little bit more fat, reducing the carbs, right? Because even vegetables are carbs, right? Even beans and lentils, things that I typically are saying, okay, are carbs. And if you're eating too many of them, you're going to have too much insulin. You're going to have more cravings. It's going to be harder for you to lose weight. And you're going to see that the pounds go up during this time of year, along with your blood sugars. And so start doing those. And that's where, when you started to pay attention to those snacks, right? How often are you eating? One of the things you can do is just remove the snacks, right? And that doesn't mean you have to starve. It means you can make meals bigger. And if you're hungry, instead of snacking, eat. Have a meal. And then that'll make it last longer until your next meal. So I mean, just cut out the snacks at first is a big thing. And I'm hearing a lot of the conversations that I have with my diabetic patients and such is, oh my gosh, I can't do that. I mean, I'll wither away, right? And it's like, okay, that is hard, and that's why I say start small, right? If you know that you have 3 meals a day, and then you snack almost every hour, try to get that to an hour and a half, 2 hours, right? And replace those snacks with the fatty or protein sort of types of things, because the average shows if you can go 10 days, right? 10 days is all it takes where you start to remove some of those extra snacks, remove some of that sugary foods, your body will stop complaining is what I'd say. It won't make you crave those foods. It won't do that. So give it 10 days where you start making some of those transitions, because what's going to happen, and this is where it plays into play. So I was in Mexico, had a lot higher insulin when I came back. I had a little heavier. I was getting the sugary foods. I was eating more carbs. And so when I got back, I was feeling that crave, right? And luckily for me, I didn't have those foods around. So I still gave in a little bit. I was eating a little more often than I usually do, but I started replacing them with, some different proteins, some like guacamole, but instead of with chips or crackers, we would just do it with like a turkey kind of wrap or something like that, or a low carb cracker, or even like a pork rind or something like that. And so it starts to get rid of that insulin feed. And now we're at about day 7 since being back. We're about halfway through our quarantine. And really, I don't have that crave anymore, right? I'm starting to see that inflammation go down even more, starting to get into my groove. And so it doesn't have to be the big change. It has to be, okay, let's start here. Let's start reducing that. And then let's shoot for 10 days, right? And if you get a day in there, it might boost it up a little bit more, but that's your goal. It doesn't have to be a lifelong change. Take one day at a time. That's the whole idea of progress, not perfection, because you're not going to be perfect every day. We can't be. It's part of being human. But if you start making those small changes, right, that's where that benefit comes down in the long run. So some of the big things that I like to do for the holidays is certainly, I know I'm going to be going places. 2020 is making a little different, but typically we get those big exposures. So have your treats, but then don't have them at home. Don't bring back the pie leftovers. Don't bring back the mashed potatoes. Don't have the bag of chips at the house. Start swapping out your snacks and some of the foods where they're a little more protein heavy, they're a little more fat heavy, right? Keeping the carbs lower. And then start with the intermittent fasting, and those other 2 steps play right into that. Or start saying, okay, if I have to eat every hour, can I go every hour and a half, right? And here, actually, maybe another bonus trick tip is, if you're feeling hungry, have like some tea. Don't put any sweetener in it. So if you have to have sweetener, or even juice, a glass of water with a little bit of sea salt, Himalayan salt, Celtic salt, any of those types of things, or real salt, a little bit of sea salt in there. And if it's room temperature, it's actually more beneficial. Drink that, right? And if that buys you another 30 minutes, if that buys you another hour, great, because it's about progress, not perfection. So subscribe, hit the button, hit that like button if you want to. I've been watching some van life videos, and they say smash that thumbs up for us, smash the bell. And, I'm here to help you. So tell me what you want to hear. Be healthy, be happy, and check out the next video, guys. See you then.